Hello, everyone. It's me again, working on my Spider-Man 2 video. 9 minutes left to edit. Working on it very slowly. And with me again are the NetherKast members, Shad and Razor.
Hey, how's it going?
Shad is currently on a smoking break, but we had to kind of get started because we started later than expected.
Yeah, he'll be with us shortly.
Okay. All right. Uh, so what I wanted to talk about today was how we imagined the events of the old Midway games went down. Because back then you didn't get much of a story mode. You just had bios and endings, and you had to kind of fill the gaps in your own head.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was arguably more fun than what they do today, honestly.
I I mean, I don't think that there's an inherently bad idea of having a cinematic story mode. I just think the current writers are bad at it.
Yeah, didn't Ed just like post a tweet or something asking if you use Chat GPD or something?
Yeah, that's worrisome.
Yeah, I'm
Although
like,
the results of that poll are definitely like encouraging because it
well,
was like
well,
90 some percent said no, so maybe that'll learn him to leave off the fucking AI.
yeah, well, I don't know. AI and Don's writing, I guess you can't really tell the difference, can you?
No, but I have suspicions that costume designs in MK1 are AI generated because they all look generic and like fantasy slop with no standout identity of its own.
Yeah.
So
To be fair, I hope Ed was taking the results of, yeah, don't do this.
yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
Or
so,
maybe he was just
trolling.
curious. Once in a while he tweets something that's just conversational and doesn't actually have anything to do with Mortal Kombat, but it
Well,
is
yeah,
rare.
it's like what happens with Sakurai and Smash Brothers. He tweets something and they think, oh, this character's getting into Smash Brothers. And he's like, no, that's not what I said.
I mean, Sakurai does make other games. People
Well,
just don't want him to.
Well, I'm glad he's actually making Kirby Air Riders because it actually gives him something to do that isn't Smash Brothers for a little bit.
Yes. Let the man. I thought he was going to retire. I don't know if there's going to be another Smash Brothers ever.
Well, he's in his 50s, so he's still got some years left.
Well, not retire, but like retire from making Smash.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd be fine if they just updated Ultimate for Switch
Yeah,
too.
that's really what they should do. There's no you're never going to have that roster or a comparable one again. And
Yeah,
it's probably much easier to like get those licenses extended than it is to redo them all. Like get
yeah,
those contracts done again from scratch.
yeah. My dream pick would be for Scorpion and Sub Zero to be in it, but But I guess you never know. They did get Sora in, so
We'll see.
because yeah. But anyway, we'll talk basically how we back to what I was saying about the MK, storylines. Well, with MK1, you got the comic book that John Tobias wrote in as a tie-in for the arcade, and that's pretty much canon, I'd say. That's the canon beginning.
Mhm.
Oh, Dad.
Oh,
Hi, Shad. You're welcome back.
we just started. You haven't missed anything yet.
Oh, he's back. He's here.
Yes. I was away from the computer. I was eating dinner. Otherwise, we would have started soon.
All right. Well, since we don't have too long, I said what I was saying was with the MK storyline, like in the arcade era, with MK1, the original MK, I would say, yeah, the comic John Tobias made is probably the canon beginning of it.
I mean, yeah,
It is.
it was obviously intended to be so. Plus, it had a direct influence on the '95 movie. You've got the animated Journey Begins telling the same story.
But yeah, that's one of the things I miss about Nine was that they didn't have a scene on the boat.
Yeah, see, I've always said that's the first thing 9 went wrong. That was the biggest red flag, is they didn't start on the boat.
Yeah.
And I've made a list of stages that are in the game that don't need to be there because they don't really have a narrative purpose. Like the armory. Characters keep like ending up in the armory because they got lost looking for a different stage, or because it's supposed to be like a hallway between this place and that place. But there's never like a scene set in the armory that has a reason to be in the armory. So you could cut the armory from the game and put in Shang's boat.
Even in Shaolin monks, like they're just in the armory because they're on their way to get to somewhere else.
Mm.
There's nothing waiting for them in the armory.
Well, the armory
is-
was where they got to the Colosseum, I think, in Shaolin Monks.
Yeah, there
it's
is
a path.
there's a convoluted sequence of events in Shaolin Monks where they can't open the gate to the arena unless they smash something. So you actually have to go through the armory to forge a weapon to do the smashing.
Yeah.
I like the armory. I wish there was a real reason for them to be in it. That's all.
Yeah, I just like, if you have a limited number of stages and you're trying to tell a story, you should pick the ones that fit the story. Like,
It's like, also, why are Katana and Jade having a talk in the wastelands?
yeah,
Just hanging out.
just chilling
There's a
in the
lot of-
middle of this flaming battlefield full of corpses.
There's a lot of wasteland in Outworld, to be fair. You probably can't shit without being near a wasteland.
Yeah, the wasteland. I mean, there's only one wasteland stage, but technically, most of Outworld is wasteland.
Yes.
Which is because John Tobias' plan was that Shao Kahn had drained it dry.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the plot of the first couple games, is that like Outworld is dying, and Khan takes over New Realms to sort of give it a booster shot.
And that's why he wanted Earth, because he wanted to because he wanted to feed off it.
Yeah, he needed more souls and energy, and they didn't have a word for it like they have Jinsei now, but basically that.
Yeah.
Are we live? Are we recording right now?
Yeah, we are. We are streaming.
Just didn't fucking wait for me to get back. You just started because Razor came. Fuck you too, dude.
I was like, we kind of didn't have. I was like, we didn't have much time. So
he's in a hurry. He's got somewhere to be later tonight.
I'm not even here. I don't exist. It's fantastic.
well, you were here first. It was just a little bit of a.
I get it.
Yes,
That's your punishment for being a smoker.
I fed my cats too. It wasn't just smoking.
Anyway, so the tournament. So after Goro says, let the tournament begin. Who do you think fought who in the tournament? Like I personally have Kano fighting Sonya and Kano winning, because that would make their rematch in MK3 more impactful.
Well,
I can't get down with that because I feel like if Kano fought Sonya in a tournament controlled by Shang Tsung, Sonya would be dead.
so I mean, there's ways you can excuse any outcome. You could literally do anything you want. So, as some people may know, I've actually written out a whole, I guess, outline of how I would do MK1, the original, as a story mode, or as a movie, or as a like any kind of adaptation. If it had a like cutscenes or some kind of full ass narrative instead of just bios and endings, I've figured out my version of it and posted it on the internet like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And the reason I did that was that I had been drawing fan art costume redesigns, that I had been inspired by Shaolin monks to like do my versions of what they were wearing during MK1 and 2. And I was thinking of like story ideas while I was doing it. And one of the inspirations was that there had been a thread on Mortal Kombat Online. That's how long ago this happened.
I haven't been on there in years.
And the thread was basically asking, who do you think fought who in the tournament on Shang's Island? And so I started thinking, well, if you're going to tell a story, then the fights you pick have to happen for a reason. Like if you look at the 95 movie, some of them are pretty random, like Liu Kang versus Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage versus Scorpion.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not
it's a martial arts tournament. Not everything is going to be a knife-edge death match. Razor gets it. Knife-edge death match.
Actually, well, one of the things I would always imagine was that Raiden was, like in the movie, he was mentoring Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, and Sonya. And I also think he was probably trying to get the Scorpion and Sub-Zero.
Oh,
Whoa.
sorry. So I'm going to start recording and don't tell me when I get back. Turn off my phone.
That's fine.
Sorry, continue.
Okay. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
So, what you were saying, Razor.
Well, I was thinking, so like usually in a story you have a limited amount of screen time, and you would like cut scenes if they, you'd leave them on the cutting room floor. They'd be deleted scenes if they did not push the narrative forward. So I tried to pick fights that furthered each character. And so, like, obviously you start with, like, Liu Kang versus Goro is the final fight, Liu versus Shang after that, but
Liu,
the actual champion match is Liu versus Goro. And then you work backwards from there to make a bracket. So, like...
Well, basically, what Liu Kang, whoever he fights in the final fight to face Goro is, like, the qualifier.
Yeah. So it's like, who on this roster is good enough to have been second place after Liu Kang?
Johnny Cage, maybe?
Maybe Johnny, maybe Scorpion, maybe Sub-Zero, maybe Raiden. Like, really, the only two names I would never put in that spot are Sonya and Kano.
Yeah.
And so I sort of, I started thinking, well, okay, they do say that Raiden, in all modern adaptations, Raiden is just an advice guy on the sidelines, and he doesn't fight.
But he does...
In the games, there's never actually been, like, published text that retconned him fighting in MK1 and 2. They never outright say he didn't do it. So as far as I'm concerned, he was in those two tournaments.
This is one of those instances where you and I just really heavily disagree on something, and I absolutely do agree, yes. The game doesn't say that he doesn't fight, but, like, starting from the MK2 comic on and going into the movie, it became clear to me that John Tobias wanted him to be more of a mentor figure, kind of guiding them, and I think it just makes sense. And I don't, there's also that whole angle about him shedding his godhood in order to do it. I've always thought that that's the kind of thing that should be reserved for, like, MK3. It should feel important and impactful and weightful.
Well, yeah.
I can totally see where you're coming from, and I don't, like, feel that it's wrong when someone tells a version of the tournaments that he's not fighting in. I just firmly believe that if you don't say a retcon happened, then it didn't happen.
Yeah, no, I
and the other thing is,
completely.
I really feel that it's possible, maybe even better, for Raiden's method of mentorship to include fighting people. Like, I think it's a good test of character for him to go up against Liu Kang and be like, I don't know for sure which of you Earth Warriors can win this, so one of you's got to beat me to prove to me you've got what it takes to beat Goro and Shang. And that's just sort of how I feel. But I've also, like, another thing that the games have been doing lately is trying to depict Raiden as the strongest character, and, like, Liu Kang would lose to him if the two of them fought. And I think Liu Kang is stronger than Raiden. I just do.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a match that I wanted to have in my version of MK1, Liu Kang versus Raiden. I also wanted Sub-Zero to fight Raiden before that, because then you can, like, make references to the fact that they've met before in mythologies, and that Raiden gave him advice back then, and he wants to check in on him, like, did you follow my advice? Nah, it looks like you didn't. I'm going to have to knock some sense into you. And then there's another thing where, obviously, every adaptation of MK1, except the 95 movie, wants Scorpion and Sub-Zero to fight each other because they did. You know, the Scorpion kills Bi-Han at Shang's tournament.
But according to the MK2 comic, that happens after the tournament.
Yeah, that fight happens outside the bracket.
I've never understood that little decision from Tobias. It's like
I understand it perfectly. But go ahead.
It gets dealt with in like a single sentence. Oh, like after the tournament, Scorpion killed Sub-Zero. Why not just say he killed him during the tournament?
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. So in the MK1 comic, when Scorpion like confronts Sub-Zero on the boat, lets him know, "Hey, I've come back from the dead to get you." He tells him, "But I'm not dishonorable like you are. I'm gonna wait for the tournament, and I'm gonna get you there, fair and square." So the fact that Scorpion doesn't get to fight him in the bracket and then goes back on his word afterward and is like, "I'm just gonna attack him, fuck it." That's character development. That's Scorpion being like doing something that makes him feel ashamed. And then he has like more motivation to make the vow to protect Kuai Liang later because he's a little bit of a hypocrite. Like he says he has honor, but the man killed people in their sleep for a living. There's a reason he went to hell when he died.
There's certain things that MK9 did that I'm on board with, and I do like the idea of Scorpion fighting Sub-Zero in the tournament, and I always have.
I just prefer anything that portrays Hanzo as a morally gray and conflicted character. That it's not, an easy black and white of here's the good guy and here's the bad guy, and getting his revenge was justified. You have to, remember the guy went to hell when he died. He's not a good person. So sometimes he'll say a thing, and then he'll make a mistake and do the wrong thing. He'll go against his own word. And we see it again in MK3 when he's working for Shao Kahn for a little bit, and MK4 when he's working for Shinnok a little bit. The man flip-flops his own morality at his convenience and then feels bad about it afterward. And that's a consistent character trait for Scorpion, and I kind of like that. So when I'm imagining my version of the bracket, I make sure Scorpion and Sub-Zero can't fight each other in the tournament. Scorpion never got the opportunity to, because the comic says he, was mad about it, and that's why he attacked Bi-Han while Liu Kang was fighting Shang Tsung at the end.
Here's what they said happened. Johnny Cage, Kano, and Sonya were fighting Goro on the pit, and Raiden, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero were fighting, I guess, the masked guard on the beach or something.
Yeah, so the scenario is basically exactly like the opening of Shaolin Monks. After Goro is beaten, Shang just freaks out and has his guys attack everybody. So you've got this melee of people trying to defend themselves, and in the midst of that, Scorpion attacks Sub-Zero, and Raiden saw it happen.
I always imagined after the battle was over, Scorpion was saying to Sub-Zero, "When this is over, you and I are going to fight."
There's always been things about the MK2 comic I've liked as much as I've disliked, and the idea of Goro just going on a rampage because he's a sore loser, and I've never really been down with that. I know it sounds that might sound weird, but
I don't know. I don't see it as him going on a rampage because he's a sore loser. That's what it would feel like if he had attacked Liu Kang. But because he's fighting Sonya, Kano, and Johnny, it's more like he's just following Shang's orders.
Yeah.
Shang just went, kill them all! I'm so salty we lost that I'm not going to let anybody leave the island alive.
I mean, if it were me writing Goro, I would have him be like, I lost 500 fucking years and I lost. Someone actually beat me. The fuck?
So the way I imagine it is that Liu knocked Goro out and Liu Kang walks up the stairs to Shang's throne room with a concussion, and he sees everybody fighting and he's just joining in because it feels like the right thing to do in the moment, that he's not really thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'd remove Goro from the equation after that. I'd have him wake up after all this shit's gone down and have him wander off in a days.
The other thing, there is like a narrative reason that it's specifically those characters fighting. Because during that fight, Goro, Sonya, and Kano all fall into the pit, and Johnny sees it happen. And he thinks they're dead. But the bottom of the pit is like covered in smoke, and he can't see the bottom. And then you find out that because Shang was having the island collapse back into Outworld, Sonya, Kano, and Goro all landed in the living forest. And these Shokan soldiers arrest Sonya and Kano because they're the first ones to find them, because they were looking for Goro, and they don't find Goro. So that leads back to when everybody like goes back to Shao Kahn and reports what happened and turns in the prisoners. Everybody thinks Goro died when Shang collapsed the island because they never found his body. So they're all like, look, we found these two who were at the tournament, and they say Goro was with them, and we didn't find Goro. So it sounds like Goro's fucking dead, and it's Shang's fault. I want Shang put to the death.
Yeah.
And then you have the like politics of like King Gorbak wants revenge for his son, and Shao Kahn is like, no, wait, Shang has this plan for a second tournament. I think I can't kill him just yet. And
Yeah.
Then the Shokan are mad about that, and that feeds into later when in MK3, the Centaurs and the Shokan, and which one has the more favorable position in Khan's eyes, and the little bit of civil war there.
Actually, one thing one idea I like is that when Kano, with one idea I think you share this, Razor, is that when Liu beats Goro, he takes the headband that belonged to the Great Kung Lao, and
that's an invention of my own. Like, I posed that theory on forums 10, 15 years ago, and it became actually very popular in the fan community. And it's just kind of a mimetic thing where other people heard other people say it. They're like, yeah, that does make sense. Great Kung Lao does wear a red headband, and Goro does wear a lot of red. And Liu Kang didn't have a headband until after he beat Goro. So maybe it's the same headband,
That would be nice. That's a little detail that's just been lost to time over all the years. And like, I think that they just start Liu Kang off always having the headband these days.
Yeah, they've never done it in the games.
I think they don't want him to appear too Ryu, And it's a shame because, like,
I don't think they think about it. I think they just go, we don't want to have that many different costumes, and when everybody thinks of Liu Kang, they think of the headband, and it's just become like his iconic image, so they retcon it backwards in appearances before he dressed like that. Because honestly, like, his original Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon outfit of just a shirtless guy in black pants and nothing else is kind of bland for a modern video game character. Like,
it's just Bruce Lee.
It is, and I like it, but you can see how a person making a video game in the 2020s is looking at all the other video game characters and going, we can't just have a shirtless guy in plain black pants. Everybody else's shirtless guy is wearing wristbands and has dragons printed on the pants, and I would
never go back to like just the MK1 costume unless I was just doing a straight MK1 remaster. I think you would at least need to have the wristbands and probably the hints of red on the pants, too. But we're straying from the events of the tournament.
Sure,
I'm just saying, how you involve Reptile.
Well, Reptile was always, like, from his MK2 bio, right? The first time he had a bio, it specifically says he's a secret bodyguard. The guy can turn invisible, and he uses that to protect Shang. So, like, the guy was not in the tournament bracket. In fact, this is kind of forgotten these days, but secret characters in general were like a diegetic thing. Smoke and Noob Saibot do not fight in MK2 either. They're somewhere in the background.
Or like, Jade doesn't either.
Jade might have fought because she is the question mark on the ladder, the arcade ladder.
Okay.
So under certain circumstances, she may have somehow been like a late substitution in the tournament if you want to make the question mark part of the story. But normally, secret characters were secret in the story, not just in the gameplay. So Reptile did not fight in the tournament, and every time, they retell it and they have him be like the first guy in the first round and get beat up, it just devalues his job as a bodyguard.
Well, I'm not strictly speaking asking how you'd involve him in the tournament. I'm asking how you'd involve him in general, because I've always had an idea of how to do it.
I sort of feel like the obvious thing to do is the same way Shaolin Monks or the 95 movie does it, where when they're getting close to the end, he tries to stop Liu from fighting Shang. But in my own version of events, I have this whole sequence where, I said Raiden should fight Sub-Zero in the tournament so that you can have some dialogue referencing mythologies and have Raiden be like, "Are you worthy? Did you get your shit together? No, you're not the guy." So Raiden wins that fight. And so I thought, so how do I out Sub-Zero from the tournament? Like, what can I do here to end that match? And what I came up with is, if you set the match on the pit, then Sub-Zero can make it look like he's falling in, but it's actually an ice clone. He can fake his own death and then try to sneak around and assassinate Shang, which is his actual reason for being at the tournament.
Now we're getting into what I was planning.
Yeah, so I have that happen. So Sub-Zero, after everybody thinks he's dead, is trying to sneak around in the bottom of the pit to get into Goro's lair and find Shang and kill him. And Reptile catches him down there, and the two of them have a fight.
We're coming at it in different angles, but we're kind of reaching the same conclusion.
Yeah. Well, obviously,
I'm taking it.
I try to have gameplay elements be part of the narrative. So when you fight Reptile, you have to be at the bottom of the pit for some reason. So that's how I worked out Sub-Zero would be down there. And the reason he's fighting Reptile is because Reptile's protecting Shang and he's trying to kill Shang. And, most of the characters are not at the tournament to try and assassinate Shang. So if Shang's going to have a bodyguard in the story, the guy who's trying to kill him should probably be the one who fights the bodyguard, right?
That's... In brief, the way I had it envisioned is that, Shang Tsung is, sitting at his table after, night one of the tournament or whatever, pouring through some scrolls and shit, and Sub-Zero is just creeping up into his window, silent and, unseen, and then the fucking air in front of the window just fucking changes and shifts, and Reptile's actually standing there the entire time, and Shang just doesn't fucking look up as Reptile just fucking attacks him. He knows he's already there, and, I'd have Reptile subdue him, and that's probably... I would probably have that to be the point where Sub-Zero changes sides. How much are they paying you to kill me? Enough. How's 3 times enough sound to you? Where do I sign? Let's be hot.
Well, that's the other thing. So, Sub-Zero fails to assassinate Shang. So how does that play out? Why not have Reptile win that fight? Reptile... Yeah, exactly. So rarely in too few Mortal Kombat stories does Reptile ever get to do anything. He's always the jobber. What if he could win a fight? Exactly. The Reptile in my head, the one I want to see, is the guy from the 95 movie who's just he's berserk. You can't handle the guy.
The scary motherfucker who keeps on coming at you, yes.
Yeah. They make it a mechanic in MKX. One of his variations gives him the speed force. If he's that fast, he should get to win a fight once in a while.
Did you ever see that video called Mortal Kombat Story is No Good, and has Ed saying after he reboots again, he's like, okay, first things first is always Reptile dies immediately.
Oh, I've seen a million YouTube videos like that. Everybody at this point kind of knows the problems with these stories. Yeah. It's obvious how you fix them, but for some reason it's not obvious to NRS.
Let's keep focused here. How do you involve Ermac, if you involve him at all?
Yeah,
because I feel like he's the presence of a guy who can literally beat 5 of your greatest warriors to shit with his bare hands in a tournament is kind of problematic.
Well,
But I feel like he's got to
don't
be
think it's
around
part
to
of the
some degree or
tournament.
another.
Yeah, so the way I use Ermac in my theoretical version, the one that you can read on the internet, is I have a point near the end of the tournament where Liu Kang is, he's going to be in the finals. He's making it towards the end.
Yeah.
And this is after Reptile has fought Sub-Zero. Now Reptile won that fight, but he didn't get to kill Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero pulled some trickery with, ice clones or whatnot and got away. And so Shang is a little bit mad that Reptile failed to catch the assassin. And he's like, I don't think you're the guy who's going to beat up Liu Kang. Fortunately, the Emperor has sent me another guy, another secret assassin, and enter the Red Ninja. So I have a sequence between rounds of the tournament where Liu Kang's, meditating. He's like in the warrior shrine looking at the statue of the great Kung Lao or something. And I wanted specifically to reference like the idea, like part of the old arcade rumor was that to find Ermac, like obviously this was all fake because Ermac wasn't really in the first Mortal Kombat game. But part of the rumor of how to find him involved the warrior shrine. And Shaolin Monks references this. You fight Ermac in the warrior shrine. Ermac is disguised as the ninja statue.
Yeah.
So I do that again. I have Liu Kang meditating in the warrior shrine, and the ninja statue, breaks apart, and inside is Ermac, and he jumps him and tries to kill him. And the only reason Liu Kang doesn't die, because Ermac is stronger, is because my version uses the Shaolin Monks and MK9 version of Kung Lao. The idea that he was there in disguise as a masked guard. Kung Lao throws off the disguise, and he's watching Liu Kang's back. He jumps in, and they tag team Ermac. And that's the only reason they win.
Okay.
And then I have a bit at the end where it's after Liu has beaten Goro. Liu is fighting Shang, and Shang calls out for help from Ermac. And Ermac goes, the Elder Gods just watched the tournament end. If I interfere now, they're gonna zap us. It's against the rules. I'm not saving you, Shang. But it's been, because Ermac has this this greater cosmic awareness. You know what I mean? It's one of his powers, his psychic abilities.
Third eye open.
Yeah, Ermac with his psychic abilities and that he's made of so many people that he's very, a lot of combined wisdom makes up the souls inside him. So they basically, give a logical reason why if they were to save Shang from Liu Kang, it would be violating the rules, and even Shao Kahn would be against the idea.
Yeah.
So he's going to step back and just watch, and Shang has, Liu has challenged Shang for the Grandmaster seat. That's the real, ending of the game, is that you get the championship belt when you beat Goro. The only reason Liu fights Shang is because Liu's not there just to win the tournament. He's there to take control of the tournament back from Shang Tsung, because the Shaolin used to run it and Shang took it over 500 years ago. And that's, why there's all this cheating, because Shang's in charge and he's not supposed to be.
Like you said, Liu Kang challenging Shang Tsung, he already won the tournament, so he's challenging Shang to take the tournament back from him and Shaolin. And
part of that challenge would be like, what do I get out of it if I fight you? Is like, we'll make this the real fight. You can get the run back for Goro. Outworld wins the tournament if you beat me. I get the tournament if I beat you.
And he was like, all right, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And apparently I imagine they started maybe in Goro's lair, went to the palace, and then they probably finished in the Warrior Shrine.
Well, there is a sequence in Mortal Kombat 9 where before Liu fights Goro, he wins a fight in the courtyard.
Yeah.
And Shang teleports him into Goro's lair. But if you look at the MK9 design for the courtyard stage, Liu is standing on what looks like a trap door with Goro's logo on it. Like they intended the floor to snap open and him to fall into Goro's lair, and then they got lazy and decided not to animate it and just use a teleport instead. So in my version, I would have that actually snap open and him fall into Goro's lair. And then after he beats Goro, he'd like find the exit. Like we see in Shaolin Monks that there's like a staircase Goro comes out of in Shang's throne room. That probably leads down into Goro's lair. So Liu like comes out of the stairs and he's in Shang's throne room, and the final fight would be there. And then when Shang freaks out and starts throwing guards at them and everything, they'd like everybody's fighting from the throne room to different parts of the island, like they're punching each other through the doors and windows and, you know, chasing after each other and stuff like that. Shang tried to escape, to get away. He didn't want to fight. So I imagine him like running and Liu chases after him and they end up in the Warrior Shrine. Because in the and the reason it happening in the Warrior Shrine is important is that in the montage of like the arcade demo screens in Mortal Kombat 2, yeah, when it shows the final fight between Shang and Liu Kang, it shows Liu dragon kicking Shang in the Warrior Shrine. And it didn't, you know, there's no text that says it's important that it's a dragon kick, but then Deadly Alliance went and they canonized that picture by specifically saying, oh yeah, Liu used the dragon kick to win. The dragon kick is a move that Bo Rai Cho taught him, and it's a special move that was intended to be used to beat Shang. And then like now that Liu Kang is dead and Kung Lao is training with Bo Rai Cho, he's like, teach me a move that's an even better dragon kick, and he gets the whirlwind kick, which is his new move in Deadly Alliance.
I feel like 100% certain it's just the flying kick, not the dragon kick.
It depends on what you read it in, because half of the, you know, every strategy guide back then had different move names. Like sometimes you'd be reading a strategy guide with Sub-Zero's move list in MK3 and it would say the Ice Clone, and some of the books would call that move the Sub-Xerox.
I only know of one book that did that, and I wish it had gained greater prevalence. But just saying, the games that I know, the guides that I know, as well as Mortal Kombat the album, which is the most important canonical reference, call it the flying kick.
Some guides called it the flying kick because it just, you know, that's a good generic name for it. Some of them called it the dragon kick because it's specifically a Bruce Lee move, and he was, you know, the dragon Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon.
Yes.
His biography was called Dragon, a Bruce Lee Story. So they would call it the dragon kick. And then if you actually, like, once they started having move lists in-game, like from Deadly Alliance and Deception on, a lot of the move lists in-game call it flying dragon kick. Like, they just combined the two names.
Yeah.
That's cheating, but okay.
So what I like about MK2's intro is that, you know, it kind of spells out what largely happened at the end of the first game. It tells you, okay, this is what happened. Liu Kang beat Shang Tsung. And it's like Shang Tsung. I mean, the MK2 comic has some discrepancies with the game because, like, in the comic, Scorpion's already protecting Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang.
Yeah. Yeah, they skip ahead to some stuff. It's not a perfect one-to-one. I know Shad is a fan of Sub-Zero showing up in a business suit and handing Liu Kang his card.
Look, I don't know if I would keep that in my telling of MK2.
Fair enough.
I don't know if I'd keep it. I like it for what it is in the same way that I like a lot of silly shit for being silly shit.
Yeah. I chalk that one up in the same category as I'd put like Jax growing into a giant, some of those silly fatalities.
I can't get it quite that far there, but I see where you're coming from.
It's something that's funny, but I don't know if it's like if I was trying to take the story seriously in a retelling. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be looked at as hilarious. Like John was really trying to get across the notion that the Lin Kuei were modernizing, that they weren't this like clan from feudal Japan just transplanted into modern times.
There is there is that,
or whatnot.
But I think it's like early installment weirdness where it gets the idea across, but I think it uses the wrong character to do it, because in games after that, Kuai Liang specifically was portrayed as the guy who was against the modernization. So I don't like if Sector showed up in a business suit and handed Liu Kang his card, that would make sense to me. Sub-Zero doing it, not so much.
Yeah.
There you go.
So like one of the things we were talking about a bit ago was the idea of like Sonya versus Kano and who should win that fight. Because like, if we know for a fact Sonya has to fight Kano again in MK3, right?
Yeah.
So like that fight means nothing if she's already beaten him before. It's, you know, if Kano is already a jobber, then where is the threat? So I do agree that Sonya should lose one. Now, the answer to, like, how she survives is, in my head, the sequence plays out of, like, it's very similar to an MK9 where Johnny gets talking to her on the pit, and then, like, it starts out rough, and they get into a fight, but then afterward, like, Johnny fights Kano while she's, like, injured, and he saves her, and then she's grateful about it, and then after that, she goes down in the dungeon to rescue Jax, like that whole sequence in the game.
Yeah.
And in my version, it would be more like, so Johnny has met Sonya and she has blown him off, and he's not as much of a jerk about it in my version. I think it's dumb that they let Johnny beat her up for rejecting sexual assault.
And well, that's because Johnny Cage was the character you're playing as for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird that he's the character you are in that scene instead of Sonya, because the premise is that he's harassing her and she tells him to get the fuck away, and then they fight and Johnny wins. Like, that's weird, man. That's a bad message.
Okay,
so
in my version, I know how to fix it. I know how to fix it. If you have to have Kano fight Sonya during MK1 and not have him kill her, it's because you take a little nod from the MK1 movie where Shang's like, I'd like to have you around as my personal concubine. Don't kill her. Could do that.
I can see that. On the other hand, I've always felt like the addition of Shang having a thing for Sonya is weird and unnecessary. Because, like, there are already plenty of characters sexualizing Sonya in the story. You don't need more.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be, like, the toughest, tomboyest girl in Mortal Kombat. So having too many people, like, catcalling her and looking at her tits is a little much for me.
The problem is not with Sonya. The problem is the fact that men are disgusting pigs, which is true.
Sure, but, like, I'm just saying, Kano's already the gross guy who's, like, being weird to Sonya. We don't need Shang doing it, too. So, like, what I would do is I would start with a scene where, like, Johnny meets Sonya and talks to her for the first time, and he's being kind of a chauvinist jerk, and she says fuck off, and he actually does fuck off, because he's not that gross. You know, we have to make him a sympathetic, heroic character.
Well, I mean, he has to be kind of an asshole and undergo personal development.
He does start as an asshole,
but he's not horrible.
Yeah, he's not so much of an asshole that he's pushy and she has to beat him up. That's too far. So after that scene, let me finish. So then you have Sonya go down in the dungeon to rescue her guys, and Shang walks in, and Shang's like, I can't let you let them out. And to keep you busy, hey, you're up next at the tournament. Here's your next opponent. Here comes Kano. Then, when you have Kano beat her, Johnny walks in and rescues her. Because, like, Johnny versus Kato is technically the next fight up, so Shang lets them fight. So Johnny saves her from getting captured or fatality'd by actually following the bracket, and he beats Kato, and he helps her limp out of there. And that's how you settle it, without any of the weirdness from 9, especially like... So in the 9 version of that whole sequence in the dungeon... Raiden shows up and like flashes a blinding light in everybody's eyes so that Sonya can get Jax out of there. And then Shang Tsung just sort of lets them go. Like he never tries to recapture Jax. That's weird. Here's the actual thing of it, is that in the original story of MK1, obviously Jax wasn't there, but Sonya did have a team of soldiers and they did get captured. And what actually canonically happens is that when Sonya loses in the tournament, Shang executes those guys. So in my version, you have like Kano beats her up, and then he like holds her back and makes her watch as Shang fucking kills the soldiers in the jail cell. And then Johnny runs in and he gets his match and he, saves her. So you resolve all that stuff without any weird questions of like, why is Shang just letting them go? Nobody escaped in my version. It's all just tournament matches.
I just wish we could do this without Sonya needing to be rescued.
She has to have a reason to start looking at Johnny in a different light.
I think you can find plenty of those. Have it happen more naturally than that.
I don't have a moral... what's the word I'm looking for?
Moral objection?
Objection. That's the one. I don't have moral objections to the damsel in distress trope.
I just find it incredibly dated.
I think it depends on how often you use it, which characters you use it with. And I think in the particular instance of Sonya and Kano's rivalry, especially the idea that these characters are going to fight each other multiple times, then you need a story arc of Sonya working her way up to being able to beat this guy. So the fact that someone has to beat him for her at first, and then she can finally do it herself the second time, that makes sense to me.
Let the record state that I simply prefer Shang Tsung being gross for 5 minutes. Agree to disagree.
Fair enough. I just think Cage and Kano have to fight anyway, because that's another thing. In the MK1 comic, they get into a scrap on the boat, and the fight is interrupted. Now, if you're a writer, that's Chekhov's gun, okay? You have set something up, and now you have to pay it off. You have set up that at some point in time, Johnny Cage and Kano need to actually finish that fight. And obviously, Kano can't win. He's not stronger than Johnny Cage.
Yeah.
So, like, and now what we have is you can see... If I'm trying to make a bracket, if I'm trying to arrange all these matches in an order that makes sense, now we have an order. We have Sonya versus Kano in the first round, Johnny versus Kano in the second round. So who did Johnny fight in the first round? Probably this is actually where I would stick an Art Lean type character. I think it's more dramatic. Because like in the movie, you have Art Lean as a guy who's been winning matches, and he goes up against Goro, and they all have to watch Goro kill him to establish how tough Goro is. In the actual canon, Goro doesn't have fights in the bracket. He only fights at the end. Like, he is defending his title in the final fight. Everybody else is fighting for the #1 contender spot. So you can't have Goro be the guy who kills your Art Lean type character. And the purpose of an Art Lean type character is for Johnny to have a friend in the fight, because he knows people in the American martial arts circuit because he used to compete before he became an actor. So there's this friend of his who got invited to the tournament just like he did. And you have these guys interact, and they've got like a fun dynamic. And then Johnny sees the guy die. And that's the point where he stops joking around and realizes that this tournament is for real. And he's got to take it seriously.
Well, yeah.
That's an arc that's missing from MK9 and other retellings of MK1, that it basically just kind of delays Johnny's character development and makes him obnoxious for longer than he needs to be. So I would definitely want to have an Art lean. And I think it's more interesting if the guy who eliminates Art and gets him killed is Johnny himself. Because the thing is, the reason fatalities exist is because Shang Tsung wants to make sure that everybody who loses a match, he gets to steal their soul. So even if you don't do a fatality to your opponent, Shang is going to try to find a way to have the masked guards kill them off screen or Reptile eat them off screen so that he can get their soul. So Cage eliminates his friend and is therefore accidentally the cause of his friend's death and has that guilt weighing on him. And that plays into, makes him angry enough that in his very next fight, he really lays into Kano. It's not just about fighting Sonya or saving Sonya. It's about working off that anger. And this is an opportunity, I believe, to work red shadows into the plot, because Johnny's always had this mechanic of sometimes his shadow kicks are red and they do more damage. What does it mean? Sometimes it means they're an EX move. Sometimes it happens at random. In my version of events, it's emotional. It's when he's really fucking angry. It's like there's a dark side to his green shadow powers, and you can explore that later when you get into the MKX style him fighting Shinnok stuff if you want to. But yeah. I wanted to do red shadows, and I wanted to do an Art lean, and I wanted to have Johnny fight Kano. So it's not just about Sonya being a damsel in distress. Anyway, the point is, you can start to see how a bracket's coming together. We've got Johnny versus his friend, Sonya versus Kano,
yeah,
Raiden versus Sub-Zero, and then just because they're the leftovers, the first round is Liu Kang versus Scorpion.
Yeah.
And this, you see how, okay, Sub-Zero gets eliminated by Raiden. Scorpion gets eliminated by Liu Kang. That's why Scorpion and Sub-Zero don't get to fight each other, and Scorpion gets pissed off and goes at him anyway at the end. So then round 2, we've got Johnny versus Kano, and we've got Raiden versus Liu Kang, which, as I explained before, you want Raiden to, test the potential champions and figure out who the chosen one is. So he kind of lets Liu Kang win. They get to a point in the fight where he's like, okay, I've seen enough. You're good. And he kind of just forfeits, taps out.
Yeah.
And then my finals, or my semifinals, because Liu versus Goro is the finals, my semifinals is Liu versus Johnny Cage. And I just sort of figured, you have to have Sub-Zero and Scorpion eliminated at around the same time. And these are the reasons and the whys. So who is the next strongest character in Mortal Kombat 1 after Liu Kang? If it can't be Raiden, because he's already done that, and it can't be Sub-Zero, because he's already been eliminated, and it can't be Scorpion, because he's already been eliminated, you know what? Johnny Cage rarely gets anything good. He got MKX, but I actually wrote all this before MKX came out, so Johnny hadn't been, the main character of a thing yet. So I was like, let's let Johnny be the second best to Liu Kang. Let's sort of explore the idea that if his head wasn't so far up his ass, he could be this strong. You know what I mean? The potential of the guy is being held back by his personality. So he's second best. He's not best. But he could have been the chosen one in a different scenario. So that's why I wanted Johnny to be the semifinals. And now you've got a whole ass bracket. You've got these 8 characters, 7 and an Art lean. And I actually arrange them in an order where they fight each other and it makes sense as a bracket, which is something they never seem to be able to figure out how to do in the games. How to have the tournament be an actual tournament. Instead of in MK9, the very first 2 fights are Johnny versus somebody and Johnny versus somebody. So he beats Reptile and immediately he fights Baraka. How did Baraka get to round 2? Shang just gave him a bye.
To be very fair, to be very, very fair about it, I can't think of a single fighting game franchise that has been good about displaying tournament brackets at all. How does the King of Iron Fist tournament work?
I think, so Tekken 8 did have a bracket for a hot minute, and then the tournament gets interrupted.
See, they They don't. No one knows how to do it. No, like it requires too much plotting, and it's an effort very few companies are very willing to make. To this day, we argue about what exactly happened in Street Fighter 2. It's not just an NRS problem.
There's an interesting thing. I haven't done the math to check, but I think Battle of the Realms follows a bracket. I think if you watch all the fights in Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms,
actually,
I think there's actually a logical order to who fights who win and who gets eliminated by who.
Which actually brings me to a separate point I wanted to bring up. Since, Li Mei and Reiko were in that fucking thing.
Yeah,
that's
the other thing.
I have no objections whatsoever about involving side characters or characters we know primarily from debuting in other games in these tournaments. I almost did find it really weird that Nine brought in Sector and Cyrax and Shiva and shit. I have some of the same problems there that you do. But I want to mention as an aside that I would involve Rain in the MK1 tournament as an example, as just kind of a prop, because I've always had this scene in my mind which shows us some of Raiden's humanity a little bit. The fact that he's as willing to fuck with Shang as Shang is to fuck with him in the tournament. So I envisioned actually Johnny nearly losing to Rain in the tournament. And that Rain has him on the ropes. And he's about to actually finish him with a lightning blast. And in revenge for some sort of fuckery Shang Tsung does during the tournament, Raiden's watching this whole thing with his arms folded. And as Rain summons down a lightning bolt to kill Johnny, Raiden flicks his finger up a little bit and makes Rain hit himself in the face and knocks him out of the ring, unconscious. That's a scene that's in my mind. It's always been there.
So the thing for me is that I'm not against any characters from later games being added to the bracket, but I am against specific characters being added to the bracket, because the one who shows up in every version of retelling MK1 is Kitana. Mm-hmm. And there's an argument to be made to have her there of well, she was originally Tobias created her to be an MK1, and just she was cutting room floor material at the time. The idea that Shang Tsung would have a daughter named Kitsune, who Liu Kang befriends and gets behind the scenes help from. And the basis for that idea is that Bruce Lee basically does the same with the villain of Enter the Dragon, who Shang is based on, Han. He has a whole bunch of daughters who serve food to people and are kind of also working in his opium den and as prostitutes and stuff like that.
Some things don't adapt into Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, we don't need that part of it, but the idea that the villain of Enter the Dragon had daughters and that Bruce Lee kind of, makes friends with one of them and she helps him figure out all the evil that's going on behind the tournament. So that character was going to be an MK1, but obviously was cut, and you can't do the Shang's daughter thing because the real Kitana is Shao Kahn's daughter.
Yeah.
But the problem with adding Kitana to MK1 is that you can only really do it if you're not going to adapt MK2. It worked in the 95 movie because the 95 movie is MK1 and MK2 mashed together. Kitana gets captured and chained up at the end. They have to go to Outworld to rescue her and have the final fight.
You mean Sonya?
Sonya, yes. Sonya gets captured. There are quite a few elements of MK2 that have been mashed up into MK1 in the 95 movie. And the reason that the movies did that is because they thought it would be redundant to have two movies about a tournament in a row, and they wanted to go straight from tournament to invasion, MK1 and MK3. But other stuff does do MK2. So Kitana showing up in MK1 and basically having all of her character development there then makes her redundant in MK2. Or you have to come up with some filler in MK1 so that you're not doing MK2 early. For example, in 9, she gets sent to assassinate Liu Kang, and he beats her in a way that, like, playfully infantilizes her.
Well, also, he's like, we won't tell anyone this happened.
Yeah.
Even though she told Shang she was going to attack him.
Yeah, Shang specifically sent her to assassinate Liu. And then when she loses that fight and they both go, we will never speak of this, it didn't happen. What is she supposed to say when she returns to Shang? Yeah, I'm not going to fight him. Like, I was going to assassinate him, but I waited too long and he already beat Goro. Oops, sorry. It doesn't make sense. So,
I think I don't have a problem with her showing up at the MK1 tournament. I could have that be the point where she loses, and the way that, like, I really like that Scorpion's Revenge does it is that, like, she starts realizing that there might be hope at that point.
Like,
but,
I sort of get that.
It's going to take her a while to get around to the idea. 2 is still where she turns around.
Sure, but
I agree.
The thing of it is that both MK9 and Scorpion's Revenge start with a Kitana who is willingly still killing for Shao Kahn. Like, she has not yet been galvanized into betraying him. But the canon Kitana from the old timeline, the one we meet in MK2, she's been rebelling against him in secret since before we meet her. So she's already trying to figure out how to undermine Shao Kahn, and then Liu Kang and the other Earthrealm warriors come for a tournament, and she figures, okay, I can use them. So the idea that she needs to be beaten up by Liu Kang first to make her realize that she needs to turn on Shao Kahn doesn't really work. Now, I do think you can adapt a version of that.
This is the same person who's had to watch their mother's soul be trapped in a jar for 10,000 years.
Yeah.
There is an element, certainly you can do a version of it where she is, like, trying to betray Khan, but she hasn't, like, made overt moves yet because she doesn't think she can win. And so what I would do is when I would have the first fight of MK2 be Liu Kang beating Kitana. Because then part of it is you can tell the story of, like, okay, that's your champion. I'm going to send my best assassin against him at the very beginning. I'm going to take him out first thing in this tournament. And then she fails. And then Shao Kahn is mad at her. But she's planning on fucking him over anyway. So that's the point where you can do Kitana realizing, oh, Liu Kang is the real deal. I bet he can help me in my plans. And then you're not sort of spending a whole game hemming and hawing about it, which I just think putting her into MK1 drags things out too long. And there's also this weird element of it where she's at MK1, but she's not actually in the tournament.
Yeah.
The more people who are standing next to Shang Tsung watching from the courtyard skybox, the weirder I feel about it. I don't like other people being up there next to the throne with him.
Yeah.
Speaking of hemming and hawing, Greg, you had to go to bed early tonight, and you thought that you'd get both me and Razor on this show, and we talked about how we thought all 4 of the games went, split-wise. All 4 of the arcade games. No, and we've covered one pretty well.
We talked about one pretty well.
How you feeling? You want to make this a series?
Yeah.
Because, like, it's like I said before you guys started recording, like, you get me and Razor together talking about Mortal Kombat. Razor alone, you don't fucking shut up about this goddamn game, man.
Yeah, I don't think one episode was ever realistic. I think
No.
It needed to be a series.
Oh no, I agree.
I'm giving you the opportunity here to, like, break if you need to go to bed here.
Well, we'll just wrap it up real quick.
Well, there is one thing I want to say before you wrap it up, but it plays into what I was just saying about Kitana. I'll make it quick. This is the last thing. So,
but it wasn't the last thing.
on a superficial level, I like to take as much of the text in the games literally and not retcon it as possible. And one of the things that MK2 says in its attract mode is that only 7 people survived the MK1 tournament. So the more people you add into it, the more you are violating that line. And also, like, just from a logistical standpoint, Goro has a 500-year winning streak. Every Outworlder that Shang brings, besides Goro, is someone from Shao Kahn's army who is probably going to get killed by Goro.
Yeah.
That's not good planning.
I have, for the record, always looked at the 7 warriors survive line as dealing uniquely with the humans, with Raiden's people, with all the people that Earthrealm sends to represent them. In my mind, everyone else that came from Earthrealm, dead. That's it.
Well, I think it was referring
position-
to the 7 playable characters of the first game. That's
yeah, obviously, like, it's talking about the 7 characters, and technically it's not even true because Sub-Zero dies. But again, Sub-Zero doesn't die in the tournament; he dies after the tournament. So 7 warriors did survive the tournament.
Well,
I have it.
That was because they were
Mocap went along with Johnny. He's number 7.
Yeah. Also, I think
He
they
lives
were
to tell the
trying to
tale.
keep the whole that the Sub-Zero and MK2 was a different guy, a secret. So
There's also that, but the point is, when you say the 7 warriors who survived is specifically talking about Earthrealm's side, my argument is the tournament was all Earthrealmers and Goro. Because you don't need to bring anybody else but Goro.
I mean, that's a conversation that would probably last another half an hour, but we can take that up next time, because you believe wholeheartedly that Shang should have fucked with the tournament so heavily that it's just humans going up against each other for the right to fight Goro alone.
I mean, that plays into it's to his advantage to create an all Earthrealmers versus Goro bracket where they kill each other.
It is, but it's just such a decrepit amount of cheating, which is all well to the good. But I have to feel like I've always felt that Outworld versus, like, I don't know, Earthrealm. Wow, I'm getting tired. Earthrealm versus Outworld alone is like the premise of the whole tournament to me.
Yeah, but the purpose of the tournament is to find representatives. Outworld has decided the guy holding the championship is the only representative we need. That makes sense to me.
There is an argument here for really having Raiden as a mentor character in order to kind of shut that shit down. And once again, I like how Scorpion.
I don't think it's against the rules. I don't think there's anything to shut down.
I feel like Raiden has to be there to maintain some semblance of sanity to prevent the kind of outcome, to prevent the kind of structuring that you're a fan of.
I don't see the problem, because the other thing is, so one of the reasons Goro is such an effective champion and has this winning streak is because Earthrealmers are not used to encountering monsters. In previous tournaments, like the ones Great Kung Lao fought in, his opponents from Outworld were all humans. He never fought a Tarkatan in the bracket. He's never seen weird shit before. Goro wins because he is weird shit and Earth fighters aren't trained to handle it. So if you let Baraka be in the tournament, if you let Reptile be in the tournament, most Outworlders are some kind of monster, and that sort of takes away from Goro's mystique.
Outworld's full of humans, or human-looking people. People like.
I mean, maybe there's a bunch of human.
Anyway.
Maybe there's a bunch of human Outworlders who were at the tournament, but they aren't characters because they're dead, because they lost.
Wrapping it up, then.
The characters who are playable are the characters who got to come back for sequels. Anybody else is some NPC we'll never know.
But it was just not one last thing.
No, I'm done. That's it. That's the whole thing. It was one last thing.
Well,
I love busting balls a little bit. Sorry.
all right. Well, we'll just have to save MK2 for next time.
Yes, we will.
So I'm
We
gonna.
were always gonna.
I think at this
Be
point,
sure to tune in for our 6-part exploration of the mythology of Mortal Kombat 3.
actually, I don't know. At this point, I'm like thinking, you know what? I'm guessing it's gonna be this is gonna be 7 streams with each one covering each game.
Yeah, that's pretty much my thought process too.
I mean, if you want to do it that way, we don't have to do episodes for Deception because
We really don't need to cover Deception and Deadly Alliance and Deception that much because most of that shit's spelled out for us.
there is actually like a very strict sequence of events, like told in the bios and endings and conquest modes, that Deception's order of events is basically solved.
Yeah, and Deadly Alliance is pretty spelled out by the Conquest mode.
Yeah,
We could
yeah.
have a
I mean, there's
conversation about Armageddon.
there's a couple small gaps in Deadly Alliance we could talk about, like where was Johnny Cage while Kung Lao and Katana were training with Bo Raicho? Stuff like that.
Short answer: schlepping around with mocap.
Why did Sub-Zero and Frost get separated from the rest of them and end up alone on a dragonfly so that she could jump him?
And why Sub-Zero wasn't at the battle with Shang Tsung and Quan Chi.
Yeah. He had to bury Frost, so he was late for the fight. That's why he didn't get killed by the Deadly Alliance.
Mortal Kombat 4 is going to be fun because we can just fucking invent a game, invent a story.
MK4 is the most bare bones.
Yeah.
Just make whatever shit up you need to make up.
I can tell you, I'm pretty sure Liu Kang beat Shinnok, but everything else, the whole game, is
And
just
I feel like
Scorpion's ending is canon, I think, except for
Wait, is Scorpion's the one where he drags him to hell, or is
Yeah,
Sub-Zero's is almost the same, but it ends with Quan Chi blown up instead?
Yeah.
I feel like Tanya's ending happens up to just before Liu Kang getting blown the fuck up.
That's the thing, is that like Tanya's ending half happening is probably how Liu Kang fought Shinnok.
Yep.
Except Liu won.
And
But
Quan
yeah,
Chi
that's
wasn't there.
Yeah, because of Scorpion's ending, he got dragged to hell. So him and the amulet were missing, and Shinnok didn't have the power to blow Liu up. But we can talk about that 3 episodes from now.
Okay.
6.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time for round 2. Round 4, I guess we're on.
I look forward to such a Mortal Kombat 2.
Yes.
He said the thing.
Actually, there was a question we got. Somebody asked, "Are we getting MK2 next or Injustice 3?" And I say, "Who the hell knows?"
Oh, there was never any hope of doing multiple games in one night. Just never.
No. That's a funny joke.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Have a good night, folks.
See you later, nerds.